Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil mursaleen, khatam al-anbiya wa rahmatul lil alameen, Sayyidina wa habibana wa shafi'ana wa maulana Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam and my brothers and sisters in humanity. Welcome to another episode where we will be, inshallah, exploring the connection between our worship and how we build our characters. Just a reminder for myself as to why we're looking at these subjects, and we go back to our very first episode where we looked at the ayah of the Quran in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, wa ma khalaqtul jinna wal insa illa liya'budun. That I have not created the jinn and mankind except to worship me alone. So we reminded ourselves that the purpose of our creation is to worship Allah alone. Then we looked at the hadith in which Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam has said, roughly translated, the essence and the meaning of which is that I have not been sent except to perfect good character. I have not been sent except to perfect good character. So we've been making this link between our worship and our character and how the two go hand in hand. Of course, we remind ourselves that we worship only for Allah's sake. But in doing so, we aim to improve our character, and that's what we're trying to explore, how the various elements of our worship are also meant to improve our characters. We've already looked at the Salah, and of course we looked at the fasting of the month of Ramadan, which is upon us. Now, today, inshallah, in this episode, we will look at the concept of Zakat. Now again, this is a time of year, around Ramadan time, when many people will be considering paying their Zakat. So it's pertinent that we start thinking about this at this time because it's on the forefront of many people's minds. And of course, people will be very busy calculating, making sure they get it right, getting their nisab and all of their commodities and their wealth and whatever it may be. But I just want, for our purpose today, to look only at how we might look at how our character could improve, inshallah, with the payment of Zakat. It seems strange at first because myself, many years, I've just thought about Zakat as a financial transaction and haven't maybe given it enough thought about how is this meant to improve my character, because we're very careful on the financial elements of it to make sure the calculations are correct, that we're not diminishing anything, we're not doing any injustice in how much we pay, and we're looking at the right places to give and the right methods to give. But I maybe myself, I don't know about yourselves, haven't given enough consideration to how my character improvement is connected to it. So, without further ado, inshallah, let's look at a number of characteristics that might improve on the basis of us paying our zakat. We, of course, know that when we utter the shahada, when we say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, we know that these are statements of the tongue, but they necessitate actions, and those actions necessitate sometimes a degree of sacrifice for our love for Allah. Zakat is one of those, where we're being asked to give up some portion of that which many people, not just today, but throughout the ages, have loved wealth. We look in the Quran at the story of Qarun, we look at Fir'aun, we look at contemporary stories, we look at people throughout the ages, and we see people have loved wealth and power. And this giving up of wealth for some is very, very difficult. So in that spirit, we understand that the first thing we develop in giving up some of that wealth is it's a show, a sign of our love for Allah. That for His sake we are willing to give up something of which we have become loving towards as a human race. Now inshallah, I hope and pray that many of you listening, and of course I make dua that I may be rid from this, may be able to control this love of wealth, or diminish it to the point at which it's just about necessity. But for many, that's not the case. For many, it is the case that it is very beloved. Which is why Allah says in the Quran, roughly translated, the essence of which means, Allah has bought from the believers their persons and their goods, paradise being theirs for the price. There's a transaction. Allah has bought from the believers their persons and their goods, paradise being the price. Meaning what? In return for what we've given of our goods, of our wealth, it may be that the commodity that we get in return, the price, is inshallah paradise. Elsewhere in Surah Baqarah, roughly translated, Allah says that true piety means giving away one's wealth in spite of a love for it to close relatives, orphans, the wayfarer and the beggars, and for the emancipation of slaves. True piety, what does it mean? True piety, bir, is what? To give away some of your wealth. Now, of course, as we have this discussion about zakat and the fard of giving zakat, by extension we also understand that this also means sadaqah, the giving, being generous. So we will be looking at zakat as an act of worship, but in that process I hope we will also realize that we are also getting the same benefits from our giving in supererogatory, in optional, in nafal, sadaqah as well. So that's why whenever we talk about this, please bear in mind it's not just about the formality of the zakat. The benefits will also come as we give in our supererogatory, optional ways as well. So the first one we recognize is it helps us develop a love for Allah because Allah has asked us to give it. Allah has demanded from us that we give it. In return, He's made an agreement that He will perhaps, inshallah, if Allah shows us mercy, give us paradise. Also, He describes true piety in the second ayah. True piety, one of those things is giving away of the wealth, looking after the have-nots of society. You know, the list includes relatives, orphans, wayfarers, emancipation of slaves, looking after the have-nots of society, people who are less fortunate. So, the first thing is we develop an increase, inshallah, in our love for Allah by giving away that which we may love already. The second thing which I want to look at, which is connected to the giving of the zakat, and as I say by extension the giving of sadaqah, is it eliminates miserliness, stinginess, and also increases our humility. It eliminates miserliness, stinginess, but it also increases our humility. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, again roughly translated, and whosoever is saved from his own miserliness, such are those who will be the successful. Whosoever is saved from his own miserliness. Sometimes our miserliness might be the thing that destroys us. And one of the ways to prevent miserliness, one of the ways to prevent ourselves being stingy, is to give for the sake of Allah. To give the zakat which Allah has demanded from us, and to go further and give abundantly in sadaqah. It helps us prevent miserliness. Now again, let's just pause for a second. We would argue, of course, that one of the greatest character traits a human being can have is to increase in love for Allah. Of course. We said at the very beginning that increasing our love for Allah, getting more conscious and mindful and aware of Allah, improves our taqwa. That's what it is. Consciousness, mindfulness, awareness of Allah. And of course that is a fantastic character trait to have. Similarly, miserliness, stinginess. No society in the world will say that miserliness or stinginess is a good trait. Everybody universally recognizes stinginess, miserliness as a poor character trait. So this helps us diminish that miserliness. It also helps us develop humility. Because in the process of giving, of seeing others in the situation they are in, of seeing relatives who are poor, of orphans, of wayfarers, of the miskeen, of widows, emancipation of slaves, all of those things, those areas where we may give, it develops in us a sense of humility. It brings us close to people who maybe Allah has not blessed as much as they have blessed us in terms of wealth. Maybe has blessed them 100 times more in other ways, but in terms of wealth and provision, maybe we have more because we are in comfortable situations that we are able to pay zakat and give sadaqah. And that develops in us a sense of humility when we see the situation of others. And the third thing which I actually want to focus our attention on today, if I might, is it develops in us a sense of shukr. It develops in us gratefulness, gratitude. This is where I want to focus our attention today, on shukr. It doesn't take a genius to work out that when we see how much wealth we have, when we develop that humility by seeing how little other people have been given by Allah's choice. He gives to whom He chooses, and He withholds from whom He chooses. This is His choice. We have to then be grateful for what we've been given. We have to be grateful for what we have been given. And that's why giving in zakat, giving the sadaqah, should help us develop in ourselves a sense of shukr. And this is so important. This is so important in our lives that I want to devote, if I might, the rest of our discussion today to the topic of how we develop in ourselves shukr. The importance of shukr and how we might develop it in ourselves through our worship. So let's look at the subject of shukr for a moment, because that's where I want to hone in on today. We begin with a hadith in Sahih Muslim, which roughly translates as, his servants, if when he eats something he thanks Allah for it, and when he drinks something he thanks Allah for it, Allah is pleased with him. So this is where we should be. Allah is pleased with us if, as slaves of Allah, if we eat something or we drink something, we are pleased with what Allah has given us, and that makes us, subhanAllah, amongst those who Allah should be pleased with him. Allah is pleased with those of us. Inshallah, may Allah count us all amongst these people. That Allah is pleased with us when we eat something or we drink something, that we thank Him for it. That we are grateful for what He's given us. SubhanAllah. Just by being grateful for the food and the provision that He's given us, we show gratitude. Allah is then pleased with us. This is a very big thing to begin with. Let's move on. Allah has told us that we could actually never genuinely, and again, if we took time to do this, so an amazing thing would happen, and I'll come to that in a moment. We could never actually count the blessings of Allah. We could never actually count the blessings of Allah. They're so innumerable. They're so enormous. They're so magnificent. There's so many of them. They're so infinite, the blessings of Allah, that we couldn't actually even count them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, roughly translated in Surah Nahl, is then He who creates comparable to any that cannot create? Will you not then take heed? For should you try to count the blessings of Allah, you could never compute them. Should you try to count the blessings of Allah, you could never compute them. Even if we were to try to count them, we couldn't. SubhanAllah. How true is that? If we actually took time, to think about the blessings of Allah, if we actually took time to count the blessings of Allah, we couldn't compute them. But how many of us actually do take time out from our day to think about the blessings of Allah? How many of us actually will take time out? Either you take time out specifically, or you, every time you come across a blessing of Allah, you immediately thank Allah. That's the best situation to be in. But let me just give you an example of where science has shown a benefit that we already knew, subhanAllah, as Muslims existed. And we shouldn't be impressed with the science, except we should recognize that science always catches up with what Revelation has said. Science always catches up with what Revelation has said, not the other way around. Sometimes, unfortunately, we get impressed when science and deen have coincided and say, oh, look, science has proved what we said was right all along. What the deen said, what the Quran and the Sunnah have said was always right all along. There was never a question about that. Science just needs to take time to catch up with it. So I want to bring to you a little piece of interesting research that was done by an institute in Ohio, one of the universities in Ohio. They conducted a number of years long research. I think in total it was about 6 or 7 years of research on the benefits of gratefulness. Shukr. They concluded after all of this research that if you were to spend 15 minutes a day just showing gratitude, so their recommendation was that you sit down and you think about the things in your life that you are grateful for. If you were to do that for 15 minutes a day, it increases your body's natural antibodies. It makes you less susceptible to depression, stress and anxiety. It stabilizes blood pressure and even heart rate. Just listen to that list. They're saying if you spent 15 minutes a day doing gratitude, just doing gratitude. They're not saying doing gratitude to Allah. They're not saying do shukr to Allah. They're just saying being grateful. To just sit there and say, I'm grateful for my house. I'm grateful for my car. I'm grateful for my kids. I'm grateful for my wife. I'm grateful for my table. Whatever it may be that you're grateful for. They're just saying just be grateful. And just in the process of being grateful, you have all of these benefits. Heart rate, blood pressure, stabilization of all of these things. Less susceptible to depression, stress and anxiety. More natural antibodies being developed in your system. These are things that we would all benefit from. But we know that we show shukr to Allah. We're going a whole different level. If just doing gratitude randomly, and I say randomly because you're not thanking anyone, you're just being grateful for the things that you've been given. You're just being grateful for those things. But if you're grateful to the one who gave it to you, if you are grateful to Ar-Razaq for the rizq that he's given us, if you are grateful to Al-Kareem for his generosity, if you're grateful to Al-Wadud for all the love that he's put in our lives, if you're grateful to Ar-Rahman for the rahmah that he has shown us, now we're in a whole different situation. Now we are doing shukr to Allah. So if just being grateful anyway gives you all these benefits, imagine the benefits of being grateful to Allah. Being grateful to Allah. Subhanallah. And being grateful to Allah is one of the best ways to fight shaitan. Imagine now if we were grateful when we're paying our zakat, when we're giving in sadaqah. If we recognize how blessed we are with what we've been given. If we recognize that, that's one of the ways that we can fight shaitan. One of the ways that we can overcome, that we can make sure we win against the battle of shaitan. Because one of shaitan's primary missions is to make us ungrateful. One of shaitan's primary missions, one of the things he's trying very hard to do to us, is to make us ungrateful. We know that after refusing to bow down to Adam alayhi salam, after refusing to bow down to Adam alayhi salam, Iblis says back to Allah, then I will certainly come to them from before them and from behind them, from the right side and from the left side, and you will find most of them ungrateful. You will find most of them ungrateful, or you will not find most of them grateful, whichever way around you wish to translate it. Shaitan, subhanallah. Shaitan wants to make us ungrateful. Shaitan wants to make us not recognize the bounty that Allah has given us, not do shukr to Allah. Forget all those physical benefits we just mentioned a moment ago. Shaitan's mission is to try to stop us being grateful. Why? Because being grateful to Allah, is an acknowledgement of Allah as our Rabb. When you give in your sadaqah, and you are grateful that Allah has given you that opportunity, Allah's given you so much that you have the ability to give in sadaqah and zakat. Being grateful for that is so displeasing to shaitan. Why? Because you've acknowledged Allah as our Rabb. We've acknowledged Allah's true place in our lives and our true place as abd, slaves. Humble before Allah, submissive, ready to give what He gave us. Let me say that again. Ready to give back what He gave us. Ar-Razaq is the one who gave us whatever we've got in the first place. So giving shouldn't be such a big deal. How can we be miserly with that which doesn't even belong to us? It came from Allah in the first place. Which is why shaitan tries very, very hard to destroy that. Where's he going to attack us? He says he's going to attack us on Sirat al-Mustaqim, on the straight path. From where? From behind us, from in front of us, from the right side, from the left side. He's going to attack us from every direction to try to make us ungrateful. That's a big deal. Very big deal, subhanAllah. So we need to fight back by being grateful, by showing shukr for all of the innumerate blessings. You know, that institute in Ohio is saying if you can sit down and think for 15 minutes a day of all the things you could be grateful for. As a Muslim, 15 minutes would never be enough. 15 minutes would never be enough. we would begin, subhanAllah, even just by thinking about the fact that He made us or He gave us hidayah. Is there a greater gift that He's given us in our lives than hidayah, than guidance? That He has made us, inshallah, Muslims, believers? There's no greater gift that He's given us. And even if you spent 15 minutes just thanking Him for that, it would not be enough. So instead, we keep focusing that we need to constantly try our best to recognize our blessings wherever we can. And yes, if you can sit down for every day and make yourselves thank Allah for all those things that you recognize He's given us. The first ayah we mentioned, we couldn't even compute what He's given us, but we can try. It doesn't mean don't try. You couldn't compute. No, it means you would never be able to enumerate, you would never be able to compute, you would never be able to work out how much Allah has given us. But whatever we can see and recognize rather than see, whatever we can recognize that Allah has given us, we do shukr to Him for that. This issue of shaitan's mission, it is powerful that we recognize he wants to make us ungrateful. We need to recognize the severity of ingratitude. Many of us as khatibs and many who will be attending the Jummah khutbahs in normal times in the absence of the COVID-19 lockdown, we recognize that we will often hear the khatib mentioning at the end of the khutbah when he will say, فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ وَاشْكُرُوا لِي وَلَا تَكْفَرُونَ. Remember me and I will remember you. Be grateful to me. Do shukr to me. وَلَا تَكْفَرُونَ. And don't reject faith. Allah's warning us. The ingratitude, not doing shukr to Him, is a rejection of faith. وَلَا تَكْفَرُونَ. That's pretty scary. That's pretty scary, that if we don't think about doing shukr to Allah, if we are not grateful for everything that He's given us, وَلَا تَكْفَرُونَ. Do not reject faith. Would any of us want to be in a situation that we would reject faith? Would any of us want to ever say that we have disbelieved, rejected faith? Therefore, we have to be grateful. We don't have a choice. فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ. Remember me and I will remember you. What a beautiful beginning to the ayah. Remember me and I will remember you. If we just think about Allah, if we make dhikr of Allah, if we make remembrance of Allah, He will remember us. وَاشْكُرُوا لِي وَلَا تَكْفُرُونَ. Be grateful to me and do not reject faith. This is so important, brothers and sisters. We have to understand it. Going on from there, another benefit of us doing shukr, subhanAllah. True worship, we're connecting our worship to our character. True worship necessitates that we do shukr to Allah. In Surah Baqarah, roughly translated, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and be grateful to Allah if it is Him that you worship. Be grateful to Allah if it is Him that you worship. So we're connecting our worship and our character again. Look in this ayah. Be grateful to Allah if it is Him that you worship. We claim to worship Allah. We're talking about acts of worship in the giving of zakat, in the salah, in the fasting of Ramadan, in whatever it is that we do, in giving worship to Allah. Be grateful to Allah if it is Him that you worship. We all claim to worship Allah. Therefore, we have to do shukr to Allah. We have to be grateful to Allah. SubhanAllah. There are so many things that we can truly benefit from in this understanding of shukr. Elsewhere in the Quran, Allah mentions how us being grateful is in fact one of the purposes of our creation. In Surah Nahl, roughly translated, He says, subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is He who brought you forth from the wombs of your mothers when you knew nothing, and He gave you hearing and sight and intelligence and affection, that you may give thanks to Allah. He gave us all of these things: hearing, sight, intelligence, affection. These are blessings. These are things we should thank Allah for. Why did He bring us forth? Why did He give us these things? In order that you should thank Allah. In order that you should thank Allah. That's how big it is that we should be amongst the grateful. SubhanAllah. We recognize how important this concept of shukr is. We mentioned previously in one of the other episodes how when Allah mentions in the Quran, roughly translated, that we gave them something of goodness and we gave them something of difficulty in order to see them turn back. He gave us good things and He gave us difficulties in order to see which of them turn back, in order to see us turn back. Turn back means what? To turn back to Allah. When He gives us difficult, hard times, we have to show patience. We have to be amongst the sabirun. Sabr is fundamental. We need to show it, and we talked about that when we talked about the fasting of Ramadan. Equally, when He gives us good things, we have to be amongst the shakirin. We have to be amongst the shakirin, the grateful ones. Right now, when we are in a state of lockdown, hopefully, inshallah, we will be recognizing how many blessings we have. Many of us will be watching this in situations of comfort, of situations of wealth, of situations of ease, of security. But many around the world in our ummah will not. Many around the world in our ummah, instead of wondering if they can get the correct brands that they used to, because the supermarkets may be not having the same stock levels, the queues, or whatever it may be, many will not be worrying about whether or not they can get the correct brands, when many people in our ummah will be worrying about whether they can get food at all. Many people live in a state of lack of security. Many people will be wondering whether or not there will be missiles and bombs coming through their roofs. Many people will be thirsty to the point where they can't even get a drop of water. Many people have such difficult situations. And if we are not amongst those situations, then we have to be grateful for what it is that Allah has given us, subhanAllah. These are absolutely fundamental things that we need to remember. But there is an incentive as well, a massive incentive, on top of all of these things that I've just mentioned, a massive incentive for us to be grateful. SubhanAllah. Not only will we benefit from the things that we've just talked about, but on top of that, if we can recognize the things that Allah has given us and thank Him for them, if we can recognize the things that Allah has given us and thank Him for them, we can actually increase them. We're talking about wealth at the beginning, about giving in Zakat and Sadaqah. If we can recognize the wealth that Allah has given us and thank Him for it, our wealth will increase. If we can recognize anything that Allah has given us, if you truly recognize the belief, the guidance we've been given, the hidayah, Allah will increase us in hidayah, in guidance. If you can recognize the iman, then Allah will increase us in iman. If you can recognize anything that Allah has given us for and thank Allah for it, then He will increase it for you. How do we know this? Because Allah says, again, roughly translated in Surah Ibrahim, if you are grateful, I will surely give you more. If you're grateful, whatever it is you're going to do shukr for, if you're grateful, I will increase it and give you more. So the things that we are grateful for, Allah will increase for us and give us more. The second part of the ayah mentions, but if you are thankless, verily my punishment is indeed severe. So if we're grateful, let's just analyze that for a moment while we have a couple of minutes. If you're grateful for whatever it is that you've now recognized you need to be grateful to Allah for, Allah's going to increase it for you. But if you are thankless, what does Allah say? If you are thankless, verily my punishment is indeed severe. So on the positive side, when you recognize something, you do shukr to Allah for it, you get an increase in it. But if you're thankless, Allah says that my punishment is indeed severe. That I can't imagine being a greater incentive to both avoid ingratitude, ungratefulness, and also to strive to be amongst the shakirin, to show shukr, to be grateful. What better character trait could we develop in our lives than to be amongst the grateful? And I just want to finish on, very briefly, how do we show gratefulness? How do we express this gratitude? How do we, through our daily lives, in our everyday interactions, yes, of course, you can sit down and spend some time going through whatever it is you can recognize that Allah has given you and thank Him for it. That's wonderful, alhamdulillah. But we need to be in a constant state of gratitude to Allah. And how do we do some of that? The first is where the heart, the heart itself, the shukr of the qalb, the gratefulness of the heart, feels and expresses through its feeling of the heart gratitude towards Allah. And you feel good for all the things He's given, and you feel grateful for all the things He's given, and you show that and you feel it in your heart very strongly. The second is that you show gratitude with what? With the tongue, with the lisan. So shukr bil lisan means that you will show gratefulness on your tongue. When you see something wonderful that you're grateful for, you immediately say Alhamdulillah. All praise and thanks are to Allah. When you eat food and you recognize this is a blessing from Allah, you thank Allah and you say Alhamdulillah. When you recognize the blessing of Iman, you ask Allah and you thank Allah for the blessing of Iman with the tongue. So we've got the heart and the tongue. The heart feels it and the tongue expresses it. This is how we need to start thinking about how we are being grateful. We feel the gratitude in our heart. We thank Allah in our heart by feeling how grateful we are for what it is that He's given us, or what He's taken away from us, of hardships and difficulties that He's kept away from us. But either way, we feel it. We genuinely feel grateful. And then we express that gratitude with the tongue. We say Alhamdulillah and recognize the blessings of Allah. When we are fasting, we thank Allah that we have been given the physical ability to fast. We thank Allah that He's given us the food with which to make suhoor and to make iftar. As I said in the previous episode, how many of our brothers and sisters will not have either food to begin with, to have their suhoor, or to break their fast at iftar? We thank Allah for these things. And the third type of gratitude is we need to do shukr with our limbs, with the things that Allah has given us, with the faculties that He's given us. If He's given us abilities, if He's given us strength, if He's given us wealth, if He's given us whatever it may be, we use that which we are grateful for, and we thank Allah by using it for His sake. If He has given us wealth, subhanallah, part of the way we can thank Allah with the limbs, not just with the heart and with the tongue, of course, those are prerequisites, we just mentioned those. But on top of that, we can thank Allah with our limbs by using that wealth, by giving to those He wishes for us to give to, both in zakat and in sadaqah. Helping people, spending in His cause, spending on dawah, spending on food projects, spending on water projects, spending on all relief projects you can think of. All of those are ways of using your wealth that you're thankful for to thank Allah by using it in His cause. If you've been given an ability to write, instead of writing wonderful poetry or articles in newspapers, write articles that call people to Allah. If you've been given speech, use that speech to call people to Allah. Allah says in the Quran, roughly translated, and who is better in speech than the one who calls to Allah? So if you've been given writing, write stuff that calls people to Allah for the sake of Allah. If you've been given speech, thank Allah for that by using it to call people to Allah. If you've been given an ability as a doctor right now, subhanallah, our brothers and sisters who are doctors and nurses and carers and looking after the sick, use that ability to help humanity, help people for the sake of Allah. This is all ways of showing gratitude, of being amongst the shakireen, the people of gratitude, recognizing that which they have been given by Allah. I pray that inshallah Allah gives us tawfiq to recognize all of the things He's given us and to be grateful for all of them, both with our hearts and our tongues, and to use our limbs to thank Allah in His way for all of the things that He's given us.